open up the staff hearing officer meeting for December 13th, 2023. My name is Ellen Kokinda. I'm the staff hearing officer. Try to get this chair out of my way. We are going to start with preliminary matters with any requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements, or addition of ex-agenda items. I do not have any at this time. Moving on to announcements and appeals, I want to acknowledge an announcement of the staff hearing officer decision for on a coastal development permit to allow proposed development at 246 Mesa Lane in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the city's coastal zone. The project consists of a proposal to demolish an existing 250 square foot carport to construct a new 746 square foot two-story attached accessory dwelling unit on a 7,277 square foot lot. The ADU would consist of a 493 square foot first floor and a 253 square foot second floor. The subject parcel is developed with a 1,673 square foot two-story single unit residence, which is proposed to remain, with 250 square foot detached carports, one of which is proposed to remain. Parking for the primary residence would consist of one tandem uncovered parking space in the existing northerly driveway and one covered parking space in the remaining carport, which is allowed under state ADU law. One uncovered parking space in the existing southerly driveway is proposed for the ADU. This project also includes permitting for the following unpermitted or as-built work. So window changes made in October of 2005 and an enclosure of the second story covered deck in January of 2007. This project is exempt from further environmental review under sections 15301 and 15303 of the California Environmental Quality Act. And then just to clarify, as part of this process, when a proposed development does involve the addition of an accessory dwelling unit to an existing single-family residence, the application is reviewed by the staff hearing officer without a public hearing in accordance with subdivision of Government Code Section 65852.2. So basically, I can accept written correspondence, but there is no public hearing. And this, my decision today is a final action of the city. So I did review staff's staff report and went out on site and can go ahead and announce my decision that I approve the coastal development permit with all of the conditions applied as written in the staff report. This is a really handsome project. I think it's going to be a major improvement to the site and just the benefit of also getting an additional accessory dwelling unit or a new housing unit within the city. So that is my final decision, and that is the last of my announcements. And now I'd like to open it up to public comment. For items not on today's agenda. So if anybody wishes to speak on items not on today's agenda, now is the time to speak. I don't see anyone in the audience who wishes to do so. Ms. Gu, do we have anyone via Zoom who wishes to speak?
On checking Zoom, I do not see any raised hands at all.
Okay, I'll go ahead and close general public comment and then turn it over to our first item, which is the project at 1350 San Rafael Avenue. So this project consists of a proposal to convert an existing 366 square foot attached two-car garage and a 64 square feet of existing crawl space underneath the primary residence to a new 400 square foot single story accessory dwelling unit on a 16,893 square foot lot. A 224 square foot patio area enclosed by a fence and gate 6 feet in height located off the north elevation of the garage would be renovated and designated for use by the ADU. The subject parcel is developed with a 1,046 square foot single story unit residence, the subject garage, and a 91 square foot shed. Parking for the primary residence would consist of two uncovered spaces in the existing driveway, which is allowed under state ADU law. No parking is required or proposed for the ADU. The discretionary applications under the jurisdiction of the staff hearing officer required for this project are a front setback modification to allow the non-conforming garage to remain in its current location while also allowing new door and window openings in areas of the garage that encroach into the setback. And two is a coastal development permit to allow the proposed development in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the city's coastal zone. And it was determined that this project qualifies for an exemption from further environmental review under section 15303 of the California Environmental Quality Act. Similar to the last one, the accessory dwelling unit, the coastal development permit for the accessory dwelling unit in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the city's coastal zone is there is no public hearing on that decision, so I will first make a decision on the modification request, and then I will follow up with a decision, my final decision on the coastal development permit. So the modification can be appealed, but the coastal development permit is a final action of the city. So with that, we have Ms. Burkhart here to present, from staff, to present the project. Whenever you're ready, please. And if, Ms. Gu, do you mind switching over screens?
All right. Thank you, Ms. Kokinda, for that introduction of the project. I'll just walk you through the plans briefly and then discuss the modification. So here we have some renderings that show the proposed garage here. It is located in the front setback. The changes that we're discussing really are just new door and window openings. Here's a survey of the site. Steep topography in the back, and then it kind of forces development to be towards the front of the site, which is why we have this front setback encroachment. Just some photos of the site as it is today. And then a site plan showing the area of work. Hello. And here we have some elevations showing the garage existing. There's a door here that will be eliminated by the project on the north elevation, which is the interior side. New bifold doors would go in this elevation. Here's the existing east elevation. This window would be replaced by a new window that's slightly longer. And then on the south elevation, the existing garage door would be replaced by a window very similar to that on the east elevation, and this is required by code. Just here's some sections and the roof plan. I think I'll stay here on the elevations to discuss the modifications. The new door opening here is partially located in the setback It accommodates this large bifold door. It opens into a private patio, which is how the user of this unit would access the unit. One alternative that the applicant team looked at was having, that would be over here, this bifold door. They looked at having the main entrance on this side, but the property owner preferred, because their entrance is over on the same elevation, they preferred that the two elevations be in different locations. And since there's already going to be a door here, they decided to use it as the main entrance. And then let's look at that second window opening that faces the street. It's just a little bit longer, and that's because the manufacturer doesn't make the exact size anymore. However, the sill height is approximately the same height. So it allows air and light in without, privacy impacts from the street or the sidewalk. So those are the two elements that require the modification. This window that's replacing the garage door does not, because it's smaller than the existing opening. Staff is supportive of the request because it's consistent with the general purpose of the zoning ordinance. The single unit residential land use doesn't change. ADUs are allowed in the zone. And we also felt it was necessary to secure an appropriate improvement for the lot to allow the location of the garage to be maintained while also allowing these new door and window openings, as they really wouldn't not impact the public or the neighbors due to that, maintaining that sill height of mainly the window that's facing the street. And I really think that's the extent of my presentation. Ms. Anderson is the architect of record. If you have anything you want to add, you can go ahead.
On this great that you did the presentation for me. I would just add the landscaping wise, we're looking at additional privacy. I think, can we scroll all the way to the landscape sheet as the last sheet? Components as well as aesthetics for the ADU. But the landscape, of course, is providing additional privacy for the ADU.
And I'm seeing it on my sheet. I think we've had some issues with this
Oh,
PDF
yeah,
reader,
lock it
so
up.
yeah, we might need to close out of the program. But I'm looking at it right here,
Right.
the proposed landscape plan. And Ms. Burkhart, in the meantime, do you mind closing out and trying to reopen that PDF?
Well, primarily focused on, the public area of the landscaping, just to, integrate it wholly with the ADUs. Was always a concern. That, we paint the entire house, that the windows be changed throughout the entire house. Though we elected to save, the client save the money, and we're replacing windows and doors and all the finishes on the ADU, but we will paint the entire house and hopefully come back with a phase two to add the second story. But I just feel really, ideally, this is an existing condition on our side of the street, and it's a hillside. And these lower level garage, two-car garages are just ideal for an ADU. This is providing housing for the client's professional son and maybe the daughter. I'm trying to make sure I touch upon the, pattern of development. The next door neighbor up on the hillside has converted his garage to an ADU already. And he's well above too, and well aware of the project, actually going to construct the project. So we've had lots of conversations around this north side patio, though that may not be a concern of yours. But primarily the separation of the entry and exit on that north side, and then creating the light and ventilation for the ADU was probably number one design item. So if you came on site and saw, basically the 5-6 residences up above, they all have that similar situation, and I believe there's 1358 and 1334 that are already two-story as well. So what else? Benefits. Ideally providing the light on the three sides, and hopefully you can understand going from the wood stop single pane crack windows to a new window system, and the sizes are a little bit different. So I always try to keep it simple and not add a lot of detail, but please ask questions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much to the both of you. And now I'd like to open it up to public comment. If there's anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this particular item, or at least the modification request for the front setback, I can take comments on that, but there's no public hearing on the coastal development permit. Ms. Gu, do we have anyone attending via Zoom who wishes to speak at this time?
On checking Zoom, I do not see any raised hands.
Okay, and I don't see anyone in the audience, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. I went out, as I mentioned, I read the staff report, I went out on site. I am very familiar with this neighborhood and kind of understand the context. And this particular street is a little bit different, and just like how it kind of moves through, kind of curves, and kind of the topography, and like how the different kind of what that means for the development of this kind of historic marine terrace subdivision. Again, it's a very straightforward project for the most part. And I think it's overall, I don't really have any questions for you. I think it's a smart design. It's appreciated because you've got, not only are you creating a new accessory dwelling unit, but I think based on the topography, there are other locations you could put an accessory dwelling unit, but then that would mean that you're digging, you're kind of going in the back side of that lot or kind of doing, there's just other design considerations. So you've got this existing 2-car garage in this space. That's kind of the perfect setup. And as we've already seen in other parts of that street even and other areas, that this garage conversion, it makes sense. And I think the reason I, again, think it's such a smart design is that you've created privacy for the primary residence and the accessory dwelling unit. And I can understand why the homeowners were really adamant about that and trying to kind of create that separation. So I understand the reasoning for having those doors on the closer to the interior lot line. And again, there's enough buffer space and kind of a zone for them to kind of have multiple spaces. So I like I said, it's just a smart design, and I feel like it's not a big request. And the fact that this development is already non-conforming with the existing garage, and you're not making major modification or you're not making major design changes to it. It's just kind of, again, walling off the garage door, creating putting new windows in, updating the windows. I think you've softened the ADU unit with your proposed landscape plan, so that even though it's, closer, that unit's closer out to the street within that 20-foot setback, you've created a situation where you're conscious of the windows and the privacy from the street, and then again, that buffering with the landscape. So I am happy to approve this front setback modification and can make the necessary findings that it's consistent with the general purposes of the zoning ordinance. Because not only is it necessary to secure an appropriate improvement on the lot, but as I mentioned, you've kind of created these 2 spaces to kind of separate the units, and they each have their own kind of private feel to them and their own entrance. And again, this is very much in following with the pattern of development within the neighborhood, and that you're not proposing something that would kind of increase the kind of the development needs of the site. Again, I just think by kind of working within the framework that you have of this existing garage, and that you're meeting all of your needs on site beyond that. So that is my decision on the front setback modification. So as it's written in the staff report, the findings there, my decision is an appealable action, so anyone in the next 10 calendar days can appeal it, or any member of the Planning Commission can suspend my decision within that same 10-day calendar timeframe. And now I'm going to turn to the coastal development permit. As I mentioned, there is no public hearing on this. This is just my final decision. I can go ahead and approve the coastal development permit and make all the findings as written in the staff report with the conditions, and that it's consistent with the policies of the California Coastal Act and will not have any kind of significant adverse effects to the coast or coastal resources. And that it's consistent with all applicable policies of the local coastal plan, the city's local coastal plan. And then I can also just confirm that this project is further exempt from environmental review, as written in the staff report. That is my decision. Like I said, you have a beautiful project, and I feel like it's going to be a really nice improvement on the site, and I wish you and your clients well moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay, and our last but not least item for the day is 138 Powers Avenue. This is a continued item. This is a 91,181 square foot site. It's currently developed with the railroad Square Industrial Condominium Complex consisting of 26 industrial condominium units and 2 closely spaced buildings, a 74-space parking lot, and landscaping. The proposed interior tenant improvement consists of an interior mead production equipment, a new as-built mid-level mezzanine floor for storage, and a mead tasting area with service counter and 6 seats for customers. Adjacent zoning designation and land uses surrounding the site are industrial. The discretionary applications under the jurisdiction of the staff hearing officer at this hearing are a parking modification to allow no additional parking to be provided for the increased floor area and tasting area. And then B, a coastal development permit to allow the proposed development in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the city's coastal zone. Staff has determined that the project qualifies for an exemption under further environmental review under section 15301 and 15303 of the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines. And we have Mr. Baumann here again to, I think for this particular hearing, we can just report on, since this is a continued item, just report on the new developments, kind of what's happened in between the last 2 meetings, and anything additional that you wish to share about this request. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kokenda. Let's see. I was going to bring up our staff report.
And that thing's been a little finicky, so I would maybe only try to open up one thing at a time. I wouldn't do too many big things.
Do you want some water?
Oh, I've got it. I'll just drink myself with coffee.
All right, so on the last episode of the staff hearing officer, we saw this project. It's an industrial condominium complex, and one of the condominium owners is proposing to permit a mead manufacturing facility along with adding a tasting room for customers. So the request, or the development increases the parking requirement compared to the prior development in the condo unit. So there's no ability to add additional parking spaces to the site, so the project's requesting a parking modification. And also that increase in parking, we see it as an increase of intensity of use of the site, which triggers a coastal development permit. So those are the 2 things under the purview of the staff hearing officer. I updated the staff report for this hearing. One thing we learned at the last hearing was the project was originally proposing to transfer a parking space from another condominium owner, and the applicant told us at the last hearing 2 weeks ago that that was not going to happen. But that doesn't really meaningfully change things. They still meet their parking demand. So it's the same situation really in terms of meeting parking demand. So we mentioned before the key policies in question for the coastal development permit are that the project doesn't increase the demand for parking in the vicinity. So a parking demand study was provided. That's been updated just with that statistic on the change of the parking space, that's not going to be transferred. So we have the project data in the plan set updated, the parking information in the parking study updated, and looking at the minutes from the last hearing, we see that you continued the project. The main reason to continue it was to give the condominium association an opportunity to be informed, collectively understand the project details, and hopefully find a path to support the project. So it was continued to a date certain of today. So we do have that document here. So this is from the Railroad Square Owners Association, and it says the Board of Directors met on December 8th to discuss the request During the meeting, the board determined that the proposed parking put forward complies with the current rules for the association. And that was sort of our question, whether owners association formal approval was required, but they seemed to indicate that the project is compliant with the rules. And then they said, because of this, the board does not contest the proposed parking solution. So thanks to the applicant for reaching out and doing that communication and getting this letter to us for this hearing. I think this was the main reason the hearing was continued. So I think that's all I have for our presentation, but I'm here for questions, and the applicant's here.
To invite the applicants up, if you wouldn't mind reintroducing yourself, and then share any thoughts or just kind of anything new that you wish to add for the record and for my consideration.
Good morning. My name is Austin Corrigan, founder, brewer at High Seas Mead. Just going off of 2 weeks ago, and just we did get together with board members of HOA and other owners. We did have a conversation regarding parking, kind of, and how we'd self-manage, making sure parking wasn't being abused, taken advantage of, et cetera. And coming up internally in-house amongst myself and neighbors, how we'll help limit or eliminate the use of, or the overuse of parking. But besides that, not much has changed, and we appreciate you guys looking over this again. Thank you.
Great, okay. And I think just I'm not sure process-wise or procedurally, but I'm going to go ahead and reopen public comment. I didn't receive any written correspondence, but Ms. Gu, do we have anyone via Zoom? So this is for 138 Powers Avenue, the continued item. If anyone wishes to speak, I don't have anyone in the audience now.
Okay, I'm checking Zoom. There are no raised hands in
Okay.
attendance.
Well, then I'll go ahead and close public comment. And I just want to acknowledge, I want to thank you, and I also want to thank the Railroad Square Owners Association for pulling together a meeting so quickly. As I mentioned at the last hearing 2 weeks ago, that you are obligated to receive a decision by the city, by the decision maker within Permit Streamlining Act timelines, and tomorrow is the deadline to get you a decision. So we only had 2 weeks to continue this item before we needed to get you a decision. And, as I mentioned in the last hearing, I really wanted this group to find a way to be able to support your project, because I am able to make the findings for it. But we do, as part of any planning application, when there is a condo association, we're so used to seeing homeowners condos. This is a really, again, a unique industrial condo association. And I think that's what makes this site so special and so interesting, and kind of the ability to have an industrial use and then be able to invite people in to understand, learn things and kind of see these things. I think because you were coming in trying to not only clean up unpermitted work, or as we describe it as-built work, it kind of raised the parking issue. And clearly, when I went out on my site visit, there was a lot of anxiety from a couple of people, and kind of wanting to understand what this is. So I just feel like having that extra meeting with your association, not only seeing this letter kind of provides us with that sign off from the condo association that they are supportive, that there is no issue, because we don't really deal with private parking. There's a whole world of private parking that, the city is agnostic to, because this project meets the parking requirements. And again, I'm going to make those findings for the parking modification. But as your transportation demand, the parking demand study shows that there is sufficient parking on site to meet this. But I think because you were coming in, you're probably a little bit of the sacrificial lamb to kind of raise and address other parking issues beyond just this one project. So I think to have that meeting, kudos to you for kind of, again, helping inform the other owners and tenants in Railroad Square, as well as kind of helping like put their mind at ease to like be able to have that conversation. And again, a big thank you to the association for being able to pull that together so quickly so that your project isn't held back much further, and that I can confidently and comfortably make all the necessary findings. So thank you for that. And I'm just going to go right into it because I really, this was the piece that was missing. And again, me wanting to make sure that the association was clear on your plans and kind of clear on the issue, and knowing that you've got, this has already been deemed a community benefit enterprise by the city council, and kind of having that wish to be able to lead the pathway for it. So again, I've read the staff report and concur with Mr. Bauman's findings in the findings and the conditions about the parking modification, that it is consistent with the purposes. Or Mr. Bauman, did you want to jump in? Or yeah, go ahead.
I forgot to mention one thing on when the timelines for getting the staff report processed with admin. I had not yet received the updated plans. So condition number 4, where we have asked the applicant to remove some things from the plans, that's already been done on this plan set that we have today, so we can just strike condition number 4.
Okay, great, excellent. That was one question when I got there. Perfect. Okay, but I can go ahead and make the findings that this parking modification is consistent with the purposes and intent of our zoning ordinance, and that it will not cause an increased demand in parking, that there is sufficient parking on site. And a lot of that is based on, again, it's based on that specific parking study dated October 23rd, 2023. And it's really looking at that evening and weekend operating hours for the mead tasting. So that's really kind of where you have, like, where that finding can be made, and that sufficient amount of parking. I can also approve the coastal development permit and say that it is consistent with the policies of the California Coastal Act, because again, the parking, there's enough adequate parking on site, and the anticipated demand will not negatively affect any kind of public access to the coast, nor will it affect any kind of coastal resources in any negative way. And the project is also consistent with all of the city's local coastal, the city's local coastal plan, and all of our other additional guidelines. Again, this is really very much appreciated. You kind of inherited a building. There's a lot of work that goes on without building permits, so we appreciate you kind of cleaning it up, creating a more useful space, something that includes additional storage with that mezzanine level, and allows for a really beautiful space, again, to kind of have an industrial use, and then be able to invite in small numbers people to kind of enjoy your mead, which is fun and exciting and different. And then lastly, I can make the findings about the environmental review, that this project is exempt from further environmental review under section 15301 and 15301, and that I will add the conditions, as Mr. Bauman wrote in the staff report, the conditions 1, 2, 3. We will strike number 4 because, as you mentioned, Mr. Bauman, it has already been done. So the tasting operations shall not open earlier than 5 p.m. on weekdays. Building permit shall be obtained for all unpermitted improvements, or the improvements shall be removed to restore the property to the permitted configuration, whichever your choice. And then prior to certificate of occupancy, the unpermitted wall sign for High Seas Mead shall be permitted or removed, or will be sent to enforcement. So that also gives you a little bit of flexibility. If you choose to keep it and just go through enforcement, you know that you're going to eventually have to get it permitted. So it's trying to create a little bit of flexibility for yourselves, but that will be something to address at some point. And I think that is it. Do you all have any questions?
Yes, and thank you, Ms. Kokinda. One question regarding the signage. What that was approved through the board HOA, Railroad Square HOA. Is that to further permit it? Is there an avenue you can recommend for me to look into throughout the city?
Great question. So the city has a sign ordinance. So like any kind, when you're doing any kind of exterior alteration to a building or a site, there can be design review triggers. So there's design review triggered for sign permits. So although that's great that you got approval from that, but it has to, our sign ordinance calls out there are certain there's guidance and standards for how you design signs and the different, there's a whole process, a permitting process for that. And we have a sign committee who reviews them. So the idea is if it goes through, if you're trying to get certificate of occupancy and you let it go to enforcement, eventually someone from the city's enforcement team will reach out to you via a written letter and say, hey, you have an unpermitted sign here. You need to get this, you need to go through the approval process to get your sign approved. So it kind of kicks the can down the road, and it just means that at some point you'll need to or want to address this. But the nice thing is the way that this condition is written is that you have a choice in whether you want to do it now, if you want to leave the sign up, or if you want to just, again, get your certificate of occupancy and know that it will need to be addressed at some point. And that's hopefully we can follow up with how you get a sign permit and what that process is. We're happy to help you with that.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just want to also add that my decision is an appealable action. So anytime within the next 10 calendar days, anyone can appeal my decision. Or anyone from the Planning Commission could also suspend my decision if they see so fit. But again, congratulations. I wish you well, and exciting to be able to move forward. And thank you again to both you and your association for making this happen. And that concludes that. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn our meeting today. That's the last item.